Hi, Ellen. Thank you so much for meeting with us. We're really looking forward to hearing the story of the founding of our congregation from the woman we call the mother of our congregation, Emeth. Maybe we can start to just set the stage. If you can just describe a little bit of what was Gilroy and Morgan Hill, South County. What was it like when you first came?
So my former husband and I arrived from New Jersey in early 1970s and bought the local newspaper, the Gilroy Dispatch. At that time, agriculture was primary. The population was about 12,500. 52% of the population was Latino, mainly Mexican, working in agriculture. It was a very conservative community. And the thing that I loved about it was conservative, but so friendly. Friendlier than any community I had ever lived in. Walking down the street, even if you didn't know the person, they would smile, say hello. And it could have been hola. And the sweetness of it really was reflected in this lovely lady who would come to our office once a week selling her homemade enchiladas. I mean, and everybody was used to it and knew her, and they would buy, and people would stop by the office and just chat. It was a very friendly place, and that was our introduction to South County. It was a good one.
Beautiful. I can see why you wanted to stay.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your Jewish background and maybe what your expectations were regarding finding Jewish families or friends in South County?
I am from New Jersey, northern New Jersey, Patterson I was born in. Huge family. We were Orthodox, conservative. My great-grandmother, Lena Simon, was the founder of great Jewish institutions in Passaic, New Jersey. She was the founder of the Hebrew Free School, the Beth Israel Hospital, the Hebrew Free Loan Society.
Wow.
Yes, she was a dynamic Jewish woman. The rabbis would come to her and ask for her opinions. This woman. Yes, she was born the year before Lincoln was shot in 1864. And I knew her until I was 18 years old. She lived. Yes, it was quite wonderful. I went to Hebrew school in Patterson. We were kosher. We adhered to all of the constrictions, restrictions of Orthodox and conservative life. We didn't listen to the radio, we didn't exchange money, we didn't drive in the car. And even though I did have a Jewish education, I have to say I rejected it when I was an older teenager and became secular. I got married and I was very, it was important for me to tell my children that there was no God of the Bible as we know it, that the power out there was something different, and that we would have to see what it was, come to our own conclusions. But I rejected the whole thing. And time went by, and we moved to California, to Gilroy, and everything changed for me once I got to Gilroy.
Really?
Yes. In that, I was lonely. I missed Jewish people. I missed Yiddishkeit. There was nothing out there, no Jewish food, no Jewish humor, none of the give and take that we take for granted as Jews being together. And it was the first time I felt this kind of profound loneliness. Yeah, it was terrible.
So it sounds like sort of interesting. While you were living on the East Coast and there were Jews everywhere, seems like that's the way life is. And then you come out to California and Gilroy and you find you're alone.
Right.
So how did you go about trying to find Jewish people in South Santa Clara Valley?
Well, we were lucky because we had the newspaper at our disposal. I put a little notice on the front page, very little, and I wanted to be a little cryptic about it because for various reasons I didn't want to say I was Jewish on the front page, not that, I had any feelings that I shouldn't be known as a Jew. So I put the article in saying, does anyone want to celebrate either, it was High Holy Days, I said, or Rosh Hashanah, and then call Ellen Fuchs, and I gave the phone number, and to my surprise, we got calls. And I think it was just about that weekend, my husband and I sat in our house and we went through the South County phone book. We called every Jewish name in the phone book, trying to get people to this first High Holy Days service we wanted to hold. And there were responses that were wonderful. People were excited. Not many. People were suspicious, some. And then we had the hang-ups, people who did not want to speak to us. So we went on to the next name. And about that time, I had contact with this Jewish fellow from the CRLA, California Rural Legal Assistance, who, when I spoke to about, a Jewish guy, spoke to about coming to this high holiday service, I said, well, we need to get books so we can have a service. He said, I can help write one. And he did it. Yes. And it was about that time that I was in touch with Rabbi Hirschman, Maury Hirschman, from what is now the URJ, the Reform arm. And I believe it was because of him we found a student rabbi down in Los Angeles. And she came up and helped us with our first service through the book that this CRLA guy put together, this service.
So Ellen, I just recall how things were in my life at that time, and I had a very similar experience, having lived in Gilroy for about 2 years at that point when this first little article came out in the newspaper, and I too was finding myself looking for some kind of Jewish connection, and didn't think it was ever going to happen in Gilroy. I was very surprised when I saw that article in the paper that said that there was going to be a meeting of Jews, and it was going to be at your house, and I showed up to that meeting. I think there were about a dozen of us.
Oh.
Pretty close to that, almost a million, or close to a million that were there. And it was very exciting for me, and I think very exciting for a couple other people in the group. There were a few people that were in mixed marriages that didn't really relate to Judaism at the time, or were feeling themselves to be secular Jews. And it was a nice connection that we were working toward a specific goal of getting a service to happen in South County, because at that time it was quite an ordeal to get to San Jose even. So Ellen, I was wondering if you remember some of the people that were there, or the kind of discussion that took place, or the feelings that other people shared while we were sitting around your house.
Well, I seem to remember that everybody was sitting in my living room, And I wanted to find out why they were here. You know, what brought these Jews together? What was it why was it that this was the first time all these people got together? So I asked some questions, and I wanted a response from anyone who would answer. The first question was, why are you here? What was positive in your Jewish life? Why did you like being Jewish? And there were answers that were very negative. There were a lot of people who rejected Judaism. They wanted to be with other Jews, but they didn't want to be, subjected to a Jewish service or Jewish ways, because the experience that they had, mainly back east, was not a good experience. And so I heard a lot of negative responses. And from that, I realized that what we wanted, the most important thing for us as a group, would be authenticity. That's why I love the name of Emeth. I say Emeth, because it is truth. It's the most fundamental thing that we have in Jewish life, is truth. And so I really felt that whatever we did had to be authentic, had to be positive, no superficiality. I remember, I think it was Stuart, as a matter of fact, I'm sure, Stuart and I agreed that one of the really reprehensible things about going to High Holy Day services back east was the show, the clothes show. In my day, it was all the women wearing fur coats, all verputzt, going to temple. And for High Holy Days, it's exactly the wrong thing. It's just the opposite. So I loved what we all said, because it was genuine, it was important, and it gave us a beginning. We had legs to stand on. We knew what we wanted to be, to some extent, a small extent, but it was there. Yeah.
So you started with this article with inviting people into your home and brought people together. It sounds like people were excited, but maybe a little concerned about where you were going with this. Can you talk about, so then what happened? Did you end up with the rabbi? Did you start a congregation, or where did you all go from that first meeting?
Our goal for that meeting was very specific. We wanted to get together for a High Holy Day service, at least one. And so, as I said, we had the CRLA guy do the service. It was a little booklet, as I remember. We thought almost nothing of what would happen after this High Holiday service. What was important for us at the time was to be together and we were kind of, I would say, feeling each other out as far as how Jewish we wanted to be. What did that mean to us? And beyond that, nothing. That's the second step. But we had to get to the first step first.
Can you talk about the second step?
Well, I actually remember, if I might, to go back to the first step, we needed a Torah. So somehow I found this rabbi in San Jose and spoke to him about loaning us a Torah. And I drove my car up to San Jose to the temple, and I can't remember which one it was or who the rabbi was, although I know he at one point came down to the new congregation, and I recognized his name. So I went up to the temple, I opened the trunk of my car, he had the Torah in his hands, and I was frightened. I was frightened. Here was the Torah he was going to give to me. We wrapped it in a tallis.
we put it in the back of my car, and I drove down to Gilroy with this most sacred of beings, the Torah, and I had never been so close to a Torah in my life. It was very, very nerve-wracking. I believe we held that first High Holidays service at Bruce Rawlison's church, the Presbyterian church in Gilroy.
I'm thinking it was the Methodist, but I'm not positive.
So that's Bill Johnson's. Bill Johnson was a part of it, but I don't think that's where we had.
I don't remember it.
So I could be wrong.
I mean, we spent a lot of time in the Presbyterian church because that's where we rented when we first rented.
And I can tell very.
Who did you say was the Methodist?
Methodist was Bill Johnson. Presbyterian was Bruce Rawlison.
Yeah, well, Bruce Rawlison for sure. He was there for a long time after
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell a funny story?
It's a funny story, which is Bill Johnson became our friend. Bill and his wife, Gay, became our friends. And so Bill would invite us to his Methodist church periodically through the year to go up on their bima and describe what Jewish holiday was either happening or coming up to his congregation of lovely people, lovely Methodist people. And then we would leave the inside of the church and go out on the lawn and have tea or cookies, and we were available for questions, and there were always questions which we were more than delighted to answer. A woman came up to me during one of these after-church services and said to me, and I am not making this up, this is unbelievable, but it's true. She said to me, "I've noticed that you don't have horns, and I'm just wondering, did you lose them? Was that something that you were born with and they didn't develop? What happened?" And I have to say, I was so ignorant then, I didn't have the slightest idea of what she was talking about. I'd never heard of Jews having horns. And so when I looked into it, I was so utterly shocked that she was serious. Yeah, true story.
Well, that's really interesting. So you I can imagine you driving down with the Torah was a little anxiety producing. So once you got the Torah and you had the High Holy Day service for the first time, at that point, did you think you were actually creating a congregation, or where did you expect to be going from there?
When I had the Torah in the car, I needed to deposit it at the Presbyterian church. I believe it was the next day was our service with the student rabbi. And so we were all gathered around. We had at least a minyan. We must have had more than that. And we were gathered around, and this lovely student rabbi, female, unfurled the Torah and asked who would like to come up to the Torah and touch it. And some people were not willing to do that for whatever reason. I was afraid myself, but I did. I walked up to the Torah. I touched it. I touched the letters, and it was the first time in my life I had ever touched the Torah, an open scroll. And I have to say that I was overwhelmed. I cried. Tears came down. And it was one of the more emotional experiences of my Jewish life. It opened a window. I could be so close to this
to, what it wasn't forbidden to get close to. And as far as thinking beyond that, when the service was over, I think what happened was we decided to stay together as a group and plan on perhaps another service. I owned the old Elks building downtown. And we planned for a Shabbat service once a month. Upstairs in our soup and sandwich parlor, we moved all the tables and chairs. And we had a number of people. We had people who could actually do the service. We even had Havdalah up there. And it was my first Havdalah experience. Because as I remember, as conservative and Orthodox Jews, we didn't celebrate Havdalah. And maybe it was just my family, I don't know. But anyway, it was a new experience, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And we went on from there. We started meeting as a group in people's homes and talking about what was to come in our Jewish life as a group.
So, were there activities for children, or did anything happen around kids? Did you think about a school or bar and bat mitzvah? Michael, do you remember what we did with the kids?
Well, I remember that I was the first youth director, and we did do some activities. We went to the beach. Your son was our first bar mitzvah. So that must have been, he must have been 13 or 14. He was maybe a little bit older than 13. And he hadn't had any previous Jewish education.
Exactly.
So it was a new thing, and I'm not sure exactly how he got the training. There might have been some of us that did some tutoring with him. I can't remember exactly. But I remember it was a fairly small group, and it was our first real mitzvah in the congregation.
So, Michael, you were there, and can you remember, did you become a congregation, or did you incorporate somehow? How did you sort of make yourselves legal?
But one of the things that I think we had to do is get status as a 501(c)(3) corporation, and at that time we still weren't talking about it being a congregation, but in fact a nonprofit organization, so that we could collect money from people and people could write it off and whatnot. And I do remember that we established dues of $18 a year, and that was our first dues structure, which was a significant amount of money, I guess, in those days. But it was enough for us to have a little bit of a pushka, a little bit of money to spend for things. And one of our members, or one of our group at the time, was an attorney who was able to write up the articles of incorporation, and we established ourselves as the South County Jewish Community. Not a congregation, but a Jewish community. And we started having activities of various sorts. I think we had some speakers maybe at some point. We had occasional services in people's homes, always. We had a lot of meetings, I remember, just kind of organizing, just trying to, what are we going to do to establish ourselves? And we didn't affiliate with any other organization at that time. We were just an entity unto ourselves. And talked about things that could happen in the future, I think, but they were still off in the future, and nobody was making any long-term commitment at that time. It was just Jewish people who were getting together as sort of a social, cultural activity.
So, Ellen, I know you've moved out of the area. You no longer live in South County. I'm sorry about that. Do you still find yourself wanting to stay connected to the congregation that you really founded?
I must tell you that I have such deep satisfaction. Every week, I go to the email from Congregation Emeth, and I read the rabbi's message. I read what Sisterhood is doing, your gift shop, the B'nai Mitzvahs, the parties that you have, the very important fundraising. You're doing that now. And it gives me the kind of warm feeling that one has when seeing a grandchild, holding a grandchild, knowing that this is part of you. I see this as my contribution to the Jewish world. Not me personally, but Lador Vador, from generation to generation. And I also see myself as being part of my great-grandmother's wonderful, I can't think of the word. Legacy, thank you. My great-grandmother's legacy. There's nothing more important, I think, for Jews to remember who they are and remember that they are just the beginning. And I keep that in mind, and I'm appreciative to Congregation Emeth for being there so I can be proud. It's all about me. When I moved up to the peninsula, I joined a congregation, and I became very involved in my new shul. I became a bat mitzvah in 1994 and have continued my Jewish learning, my Jewish immersion. Since then, I am Shabbat observant to a great extent, as I was when I was a girl. I go to many classes. I would say I live my life Jewishly, and I'm proud to say that my children and my grandchildren are living Jewish lives.
That's a legacy.
It's a legacy.
Well, thank you, Ellen Fuchs. I really appreciate that you've given us this time to learn about the beginnings of our congregation. This interview will be a treasure, will be part of the legacy of the congregation. We're going to be showing it at our 40th anniversary to celebrate, and I know that you will be there, and we are all thrilled that you'll be joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Michael, thank you.
Thank you.